Microscopic dots of paint on the clothes of women pulled from a river helped expose one of the most prolific serial killers in United States history. Not a witness, not a confession, just tiny paint spheres from a truck factory. This is the story of the Green River Killer. In the early 1980s outside Seattle, bodies began turning up in and around the Green River. Within a few months, 5 young women were found in or near the water, and then more in nearby woods and ravines. Many were runaways or sex workers picked up along Pacific Highway South. They had been strangled and left where someone might never find them. Detectives formed the Green River Task Force. The case grew to dozens of victims across King County. They were sure they were dealing with a serial killer, but the evidence was thin. Suspects came and went. One of them was a quiet truck painter named Gary Ridgway, who worked at a heavy truck plant and lived a normal-looking life in the suburbs. He passed a polygraph test and stayed free. For years, it looked like the river would keep its secret. Then lab work started to tell a different story. Forensic scientists examined the clothing of some of the earliest victims and found something odd under the microscope. Tiny round particles of industrial spray paint. When they analyzed those particles, they matched a very specific kind of paint used at the Kenworth truck factory where Ridgway worked. That did not prove he was the killer, but it pulled him back into focus. Back in 1987, detectives had already taken hair and saliva samples from Ridgway. At the time, DNA testing was too limited to help. By 2001, that had changed. Investigators sent those old samples back to the lab and compared them to DNA from several victims. The profiles matched. Ridgway was tied directly to multiple Green River murders. On November 30th, 2001, officers arrested him outside the truck plant where he worked. 2 years later, in November 2003, he stood in court and pleaded guilty to 48 counts of aggravated first-degree murder as part of a deal that spared him the death penalty in exchange for full cooperation. He later admitted to killing even more women. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 1 life sentence for each victim. Today, Gary Ridgway is serving those sentences in a Washington state prison. For nearly 20 years, he moved through the Seattle area as a husband, a father, and a truck painter, while scores of women vanished into the woods and the river. In the end, it was not a dramatic chase that unmasked the Green River Killer, but microscopic paint on a victim's clothing, a forgotten saliva sample, and a forensic lab that finally turned those tiny clues into a name.